Hi, it's Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions, and this week we are all about distress tolerance. So as we are looking at trying to find success and really tapping into our executive, our leadership functions, distress tolerance and emotional regulation are a key part of that factor. And without being able to ground in the present, we can't access all of our leadership and executive functions that we have. And so we've been talking about distress tolerance, and we've been talking about emotional resiliency, and now we're going to bring them together. So for everybody on this first full week of the year, getting back into all of the stress and distress that life brings us, our holiday is over. Now is the time to understand and unlock the true power of what to be setting goals for this year, and that is distress tolerance and emotional resilience. Because when we have that, we can do anything and we can hit all of the success factors that we want. And so as we said in the past video, so go check them out, distress tolerance is surviving. It's just getting through the distressing moments. Emotional resiliency is breaking through, and it is excelling past the distress. So we really are rebounding and finding growth and value amongst all of the distress. And that is what is kicking off our positive cycle. Distress tolerance is neutralizing the cycle. Emotional resilience is kicking off the positive cycle. So for them together, we can do anything. It takes the same amount of energy to enter into a positive or negative cycle. But because of the psychological phenomenon of negative bias, we are more likely to enter into a negative cycle than a positive cycle. So the energy is all the same. It doesn't take a lot. Last week we talked about this willpower, control, being strict, having discipline, and what we found is that is the negative cycle taking over. We think that we're not disciplined enough. We don't have enough willpower. That's why we aren't the weight that we want. That's why we don't have the things that we want. That's why we're not going to be able to retire when we want to retire. That's why we don't have the savings that we want. And it's all your negative narrative. The reason you don't have that is because you're not utilizing your distress tolerance and your emotional regulation. You are allowing these things to overwhelm you, pull you into all or nothing thinking, allow cognitive distortions to come in and create invalid data points that hold you to your negative narrative. All of your stress, all of your trauma is coming in and creating a filter and a perspective of what life is, and you are interacting with life with that despair and suffering, and life is interacting with you in that despair and suffering. And so what distress tolerance and emotional regulation does is it changes the perspective. It gives you a growth mindset. It allows you to find gratitude, and it helps you to lift up past the distress. It helps you to gain an advantage. A couple weeks ago, you can go back to a video under stress management where we saw that we could actually step on stress to move us and launch us forward, to get an advantage over our opponents. When we can harness it with emotional regulation and distress tolerance, we're catapulting. We're using that fight, flight, or freeze and all of those hormones to catapult us to be stronger, to actually gain more energy, to be able to do more. And here we go. So let's put them together. Emotional resilience is, again, the adapt, recover, and thrive in the face of adversity, challenges, or setbacks. And for leaders, this resilience is vital to maintaining composure and fostering trust and driving success in their teams. Because when we have uncertainty, then we have emotional reactions. People will become defensive. they won't be able to listen. They will get into and slide into all or nothing thinking. And those cognitive distortions are right behind all or nothing thinking. That is the engine of the cognitive distortion train. And we talked a little bit about the thought train and our mindfulness at the beginning of this section of emotional regulation. So 6 weeks ago, we had the thought train, and so some good stuff in there if you go back to that video. And so how emotional resilience works in leadership is it creates adaptability, emotional regulation, and inspiration. It's allowing people to really be able to see what their kind of best self can be, and they feel empowered when they do this. And so distress tolerance, again, is survival. It's going to be enduring with these difficult emotions. It's neutralizing the cycle so that you don't slip into an avoidant pattern. But when we get distress, the negative cycle of distress says that we feel overwhelmed, we avoid or we do some kind of impulsive behavior as an effort to avoid. That is addiction. That is scrolling, doom scrolling on your phone. That is calling people that you probably should not be calling, or saying things in what we call chaos seeking. It's overbuying things, impulse buying. It is binge eating. It is playing video games. Binge watching TV. That binging, restricting, that is, you're in the binge moment. And then it's increased distress and suffering. So as we talked about last week on the words of discipline, or the language of discipline, we talked about having shame or guilt around something. So we say, I don't have a good relationship with this. So we become strict with ourselves and we say, well, I don't want anything to do with this relationship. We restrict. And then what we find is we get overwhelmed. And we realize that this relationship isn't going away. Just because we don't want to engage with it doesn't mean it doesn't go away. Because we don't want to eat sugar because sugar is slowly killing us doesn't mean that sugar naturally just goes away in life. And so then we feel like life is chaotic and we feel overwhelmed by all of the chaos in life. We feel like we have no willpower against this in our lives. And so what do? We lean into the chaos, and we actually let the chaos kind of succumb us, and we become guilt-ridden, and we overindulge in what that is that we don't have a good relationship with. And then it leads to more shame and guilt. This is the distress cycle. Avoiding, overindulging, shame and guilt creates worse relationship, more avoidance, more overindulgence, more shame and guilt. It just keeps going. And so what distress tolerance says is that if we interject a little lightning bolt and interject right there where the distressing thought, feeling, or belief is, or over here where we have low value, low motivation, lack of capacity, either one, lightning bolt into either one of those, or the avoidant behavior, we lightning bolt into there. There's a lot of opportunities to lightning bolt. It's the good news. Is we neutralize the distress cycle. And when we neutralize the distress cycle, we sit there with the suck. We just kind of sit there, and I just did a video on leaning into this. Something about the ick factor. So it's a couple days ago. So go look at that, kind of overcoming the ick. And we're sitting in the distress, and we're just trying to be present with it. We're trying to have radical acceptance with it and say, okay, like, this isn't the best. I know I don't want to avoid. And if I want to avoid, then I want to do an opposite action. That's the other interjection point. We just opposite act, okay? When I am stressed out, I go and get like a pint of Ben & Jerry's and I eat that sucker up, right? So then don't get a pint of Ben & Jerry's. Instead, go on a walk, right? Opposite action. Or distressing thought or feeling. We're mindful, we're staying present. We're just sitting with, okay, what about this is so distressing? Where's my trigger? Where's my consequence? ABC. All in my book of Saying Goodbye to Bad Brain, and there's a link so that you can take a look at it in the video description below. And then you have the actual doing something. So when you do self-care, you are adding immediate value to yourself, implicitly and explicitly. It is compounded good interest. You're just getting free dopamine, you're getting free interest in your value. Like, you are just doing lots of investing in yourself just by doing a little self-care. By saying, you know, I'm really tired tonight, I want to go through the drive-in, but you know what, I think I'm just going to actually go on my app and I'm just going to order, you know, a prepared meal at, you know, the grocery store, and a bag of salad, and maybe even they even have like rotisserie chicken, you know. I'm gonna get some things and I'm just gonna have it already ready. So instead of going through the drive-thru, I'm just gonna go really quickly. I'm in one of the front parking spots. I'm just gonna pick up those groceries, and I already have everything prepared, and now I'm making a healthy choice for myself. I feel good about myself. I feel more capable. I'm getting nutrients, so I'm feeling better. I'm getting more energy, all because all I did was decide that I didn't want to go through the drive-thru, and instead I went on an app and I picked what my groceries were. It's these small things. You don't have to do everything. You have to do one thing a day. That's all emotional resiliency is one thing a day, to choose to do something for yourself, to choose a perspective of gratitude, to choose to be able to do some self-care, to choose to find a growth moment. That is emotional resiliency. And if you can do that every single day this year, you are going to find that you are a completely different person come 2026. You are going to find that your clothes fit better. You're going to find that you have more money in your bank account. You're going to find that you have better friends and better relationships. You're going to find that you're doing better at work. Why? Because you're taking stress and you are catapulting beyond it, instead of letting it make you feel overwhelmed and held back. It's called emotional resiliency. It's what the industries use against you in order for them to make billions of dollars. And all you have to do is invest a little bit in yourself. Choose a better perspective. Choose a valued self-care moment. And so emotional resilience in action is how we're going to complement this distress tolerance. Distress tolerance, we're just staying present. We're not getting in the avoidance cycles. Emotional resilience says we choose one step of what our agency is. Our agency is our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors. We're choosing one of those. Our value of ourself, our distressing thoughts and feelings, our avoidant behaviors. We're choosing one of those and choosing to take it in this positive, start the positive cycle. And this allows us to endure distress. It starts with accepting the discomfort as a natural part of life. Like, life is stressful. Life is chaos. The first thing that we learn in radical acceptance, life is chaos. Creating life is chaos. We are inviting chaos into our lives. And that is okay. There's no judgment. There's no judgment. There's no shame in this game. You are inviting chaos in. Life is chaotic. Life is going to be chaotic. There's nothing about what you did that made life chaotic. Life was just chaotic on its own. And you're just trying to figure out what it means for you and what you want to do with it. Mindfulness and grounding is a great way. Finding the here and now, radical acceptance, no judgment, letting things go. Tomorrow, subscribe, and tomorrow we're going to release acceptance and letting go. It is a big part of how we're going to find emotional resiliency. Recovering and reframing is another part of how we're going to complement each other and launch from our stress management. And that means that we're building tolerance to distress through transforming adversity into learning opportunities, growth mindset, pivot points. We stay flexible and we find what this adversity is, what this stress is today, what I wish I didn't do today is what I learned from tomorrow. I don't sit there in shame of shoulda, couldas. Shoulda, coulda is an anxious mind. It holds you back. Instead, learn from it. when I was a baby therapist, you know, just coming out of the wound of counseling, and I still had my supervisor, you know, I would be like, oh yeah, and I did this, and I did this, and they said this, and I said this, and you know, I'm just feeling so confident. And my supervisor many times would be like, you want to explore something there, Jen? No, not really. I thought it was really good. Like, we were really getting along, and I really feel like I helped them. They're like, well, you missed something. You missed a therapeutic opportunity. And at that moment, I could say, well, maybe it'll come up again, and like, no biggies, right? But no, what I do is I humble myself. I go back to the client and I say, hey, you know that, you know, I just got out of grad school. I'm just starting my journey as a therapist. I do have a licensed supervisor so that I can become, you know, a licensed therapist. And I was really touched by our story and our session, and I really wanted to share that with them, you know, to make sure that I'm giving you everything that I possibly can. And they pointed out to me that I actually missed a really big therapeutic opportunity, and I want to make sure that we spend a little bit exploring that and making sure that you really felt heard and seen in this moment, because I may not have given that to you, and I really want to make sure that we're honoring that space right now. And that makes a huge difference in people's lives and how they see what therapy is, and how they interact with you, and how they trust you, and how they trust themselves, and how they feel about themselves and the experiences they have. Because if I miss that, they may have been like, well, maybe it really wasn't that big of a deal. And it may have been a big deal. Just because I may not have heard it at that time, because I didn't have the training at the time to hear it, doesn't mean it wasn't meaningful. And it meant the world to my clients for them to know that not only did I hear about them, that I thought about them outside a session, but I went and I sought professional help as well to make sure I gave them what they needed. That kind of recovery and reframing of owning your own actions and making sure that you are mindful and intentional with what you do and who you're with, that goes across the board. That's when I say to my couples, own your side of the street. Couples are relationships or interactions between two people, so this can be anybody. And you own your side of the street and you say, ooh, like, I'm not really feeling really good right now. I think I need a minute to just understand what's going on. It forces somebody else to figure out, well, what am I in a good place too? Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I reactionary? It helps people to give them that space for them to contend with their own stuff, because we are owning and recovering what our stuff is. And it's allowing us to inventory the valid data points that this is a trigger. I've just been triggered, and I need to know that, so that in the future when this comes up, I've already done my breathing techniques. I'm already grounded. So when this comes up, I have a higher likelihood of making an action-oriented decision. And so when we can understand kind of where we are coming from, what our triggers are, then we're going to be able to take that, we'll have like a grapple hook, a foundation to make the right step. And that's what we're seeking, is we're trying to find a neutral zone so that we can take one step towards a positive cycle. And when we do all of this, that's what we're getting into, is we're getting into taking purposeful action, finding what our agency is and making one purpose-driven movement to what it is that will give us value, will lessen or reframe the negative, distressing thought or feeling that will create an opposite action and remove the avoidant tendencies. And so the distress cycle versus the resilient cycle. A distress cycle is stress, being emotionally overwhelmed, having avoidance or some impulsive behavior that we engage in, and then more distress, as we talked about earlier. The resilient cycle is having stress, emotional regulation, so we are clear with where our emotion is. We are grounded in making executive function decisions, action-oriented decisions. It gives us a chance to find what our agency is and take purpose-driven action in order to find growth, learning, gratitude, or value and strength building in our experiences. And breaking this cycle must be conscious and must be integrated into our emotional resilience and distress tolerance to disrupt these patterns of avoidance and create pathways to personal and professional growth. This is how we do this. This is what it is to begin the year and to start living towards and within the framework of success. It is truly finding radical acceptance, letting go that which does not serve us, sitting with the distress, taking a purpose-driven action. In leadership and personal growth, when we can do this, leaders will find that they will get stuck in these distress cycles, which may appear to be reactionary, indecisive, or disengaged. In relationships, often when we get in these cycles, what do? We feel as if we are disengaged, we feel aloof, we feel disconnected to others, and people feel disconnected to us. Self-fulfilling prophecy starts to happen. It's also when you cultivate this resiliency, you'll foster trust, encourage innovation, and model effective problem solving. In personal growth, when we can break this distress cycle, we're actually building confidence, self-efficacy, and adaptability. We are showing that we can approach challenges through curiosity and determination and drives continuous improvement. We are getting better every day, so we don't have to realize what we don't have because we know what we're getting. Every single day, we're getting just a little bit better, a little bit stronger, a little bit more capable. And so it starts with awareness, understanding what our triggers are, understanding without judgment and radical acceptance where we are at. It's no shame in the game. It's just the brain going for survival. Acceptance, it's just the brain going for survival. And then action. We want to reframe our challenges. We want to build resilient practices, and we want to engage in purpose-driven action. This is what I have. What you want this year is emotional resiliency and distress tolerance. It will take you everywhere in life. Go into the video description, click on a free wellness insight. I will give you 15 minutes of my time to tell you how you can do this, to find awareness and acceptance of where we are pulling ourselves into the distress cycle. Share this with other people. Allow them the opportunity to find awareness and acceptance so they can also start to take action in a healthier, happier manner. I am Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions. Thank you so much.